Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 14th episode of the Zildjain Talk with Darshan Doshi. Today, as you know, we have an incredible drummer, and I'm very, very excited for this episode. I've known him for a while. Obviously, everybody knows him, who he is, and I'm very, very excited that he said yes, and he's come on board to give his time and to talk to us and inspire all of us. I'm just going to wait for some more people to join in, and till then I'm just going to paste this comment, and yes, perfect. Let's see, and that's it. That's good. How's everyone doing? Hi Manvijay, hi Sanket, hi Kalp. Good to see all of you guys joining in. Just gonna wait for some more people and before we invite him. As everybody knows, he's a Grammy Award winning drummer and composer, best known for his work with jazz guitarist Pat Metheny. In 2014, he composed an original drum score for the film Birdman, which won several prestigious awards. His first album, Migration, featured artists like Chick Corea, Chris Potter, David Sanchez, and Pat Metheny. I've also been very fortunate to spend time with him when he visited India years ago, and also recently watched him live with his band in Vancouver at the Vancouver Jazz Fest, and also watched him at NAM on my trip earlier this year with his wife Thana, Alexa, who's an incredible singer. So without any further ado, I'm gonna invite him, the one and only Antonio Sanchez. Let's see if he's here. Hi, Antonio.
Hey, Darshan, how you doing?
Very good. So good to see you here. And welcome to the Zildjian Talk and welcome to the Zildjian India channel.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here with you. It's been so long since I saw you and since the first time we hung out in Mumbai. So this is fun. Thank you for the invite.
Yes. Firstly, how are you doing? How's everything back in New York, and how are you dealing with this pandemic? And were you on tour when this was announced?
Yeah, I was on tour with Pat Metheny. We were in doing a long tour that started in where did we start? I mean, it was Australia, New Zealand, then it was supposed to be Argentina, Mexico, Peru, Brazil, Chile. Anyway, we traveled from Auckland in New Zealand to Buenos Aires, and when we were in Buenos Aires, that's when everything started getting out of control, and then one country after the other started canceling, and it took us maybe like 3 days to try to find a way to come back to New York. We went through Sao Paulo, and it was very stressful because you had the feeling that the infection was everywhere at that moment. And then got to New York, and as you know, New York was in really bad shape for a while. And we live here where I live in Jackson Heights. It was the epicenter of the epicenter. So we were in a really bad spot. We used to listen to ambulances going all day because there is a hospital here called Elmhurst Hospital, and it was one of the worst hit hospitals in the country at that moment. So now, luckily, because of very disciplined way of dealing with the whole situation by the New Yorkers, we definitely flattened the curve, and we're in a much better place than other places in the country right now, like Texas or Florida, are doing really, really bad right now because they didn't want to enforce a lot of things that New York enforced from the beginning. And I have to ask how things in India regarding all this stuff.
Uh, Same thing out here. Actually, we started up with almost like a couple of months of lockdown. Then we opened up about a couple of weeks back. But then the cases are really going high, and again, the government has issued a couple of cities today saying another lockdown till 31st of July. So it's
Okay.
uh, it's just about getting better, and then again things are opening up, and people are not taking care, not wearing masks. So it's kind of a little crazy out there as well.
Yeah, it's just in high density places like New York or India, it's just, there's so many people, it's very hard to control. So
Yes.
I wish you the best, man.
Same to you, man.
Thank you.
So tell us, we're on the Zildjain India page. We wanted to know firstly before we go on to your journey and where you started everything. How did you connect with Zildjian Cymbals, and when did you get endorsed with Zildjian?
It was a while ago. It must have been maybe like 94 or 95, something like that. Where the way it happened, I was in at Berklee College of Music. I was a student, and I had a very good teacher that started helping me out and recommended me with a competitor of Zildjian in the beginning,
Okay.
and they offered me an artist deal with this other company. And I was, of course, so honored that as a student, somebody would be offering me anything, so I
Yes.
accepted. And it was one of those, I don't know, maybe a 50% deal or something like that. So I
Okay.
went to the factory and they said, choose whatever you want. So I chose a bunch of beautiful cymbals and I started playing them. And then maybe like a month later, I got a bill for like $1,500, which back then I had absolutely no money, nothing. I had no money. So I was like, I can't pay this. So at the same time, John de Christopher that used to work at Zildjian back
Yes.
then in Massachusetts, there was a festival at Berkeley, and then he saw me and he said, I'm aware of what's going on with you and this other company. I just want to tell you that we would love to have you, and it would not be an artist discount; it would be a full ride.
Oh, yes.
So that's when I joined, and then I went to the factory and I chose a bunch of cymbals, and it's been such a great relationship with everybody that used to work there, and then they left, got replaced by other people, and the new people, like Sarah Hagen now that I've been working with for years now. They're just fantastic people, and they really take care of their artists.
Right. Also, just to talk about the series that you've been using for a while, I when I saw you at the Vancouver Fest as well, there were a couple of prototypes as well. So, are you working on something with Zildjian for like a prototype which is going to come out for other people as well?
Not really. I when before all these symbols with a bunch of holes started coming out, I asked Zildjian to make me something, and John Francis made me this really, really cool symbols with tiny little holes before the effect symbols came out, I think.
Okay.
And he made me three, and I've been using those. And I'm one of those guys that once I find a set that I like, I don't change that much from symbol to symbol. I add little things and here and there, but my main setup has kind of remained the same for a while now.
Okay. So, is it like a mix of Constantinople and some flat rides and stuff that you've been using currently?
Well, the main setup is yeah, I used to use a lot of Constantinople's. I still use one maybe, but I've been using, this very old K that I bought from Patrick Ferrero, who's the drummer of Hamilton. I bought
Yes.
it from him a long time ago, and it has a chunk missing. Maybe, anybody that has seen me play has seen me play with that cymbal. It has I mean, I'll show it to you. It's probably easier. I have my setup right here.
Oh, nice. Okay.
So is this one.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yes. Okay.
So it's a beautiful old K that sounds incredible. And then the
Nice.
prototypes I was talking about,
Yes.
this one. Also, whoever has seen me play, has seen me play with it.
Yes,
So
I've seen
I
that.
have two of them here, and this Constantinople I've been using for a while. It's actually a ride, but I use it as a crash. It's a medium thin low 20-inch
Nice.
with 3 rivets. Actually, this one, no, only 1 rivet left. The other ones have fallen through the years.
Okay.
And then
Oh,
here
wow.
I have a one of those Z bells. I think this is
Zildjain.
yeah, not sure if this is a prototype or not. They gave it to me a long time ago, and then I've been using more and more stacks.
Nice.
So this
What
one,
is under the Oriental China?
yeah. So this is custom hybrid trash. Let me see.
Okay.
I'm terrible with names. This is a custom hybrid trash splash.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah, and it's a 13-inch, and it has an Oriental China trash on top.
Nice.
And then also I've been using this splash,
6 inch. Yeah.
yeah, 6-inch A custom, inverted for years now. This
Okay.
is the famous ride,
Yes.
really really cool. And then I've been using other kinds of stacks. This is the
FX.
FX stack, but sometimes for these cymbals you need like an extra adapter, because when you put 2 of these as a hi-hat, then it gets really thick, so you
Right.
need an adapter. So what I did is, instead of using the adapter, I'm using this. It's a Sound Lab prototype, but it's
Okay.
basically a mini China as
Got it.
well. And then I put this one on top, and then you don't need an adapter. It fits perfectly there, and
Nice.
it sounds really 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 cool. Um,
Lovely.
and this one's very trashy.
Yeah.
And then on this side, I'm using this other stack, which is a custom hybrid splash. It's an 8-inch.
Right.
And then underneath is a 10-inch special recording hi-hat,
Oh, nice.
which I don't even know if they make these anymore. SR10 bottom hi-hat, and it's special recording.
Nice.
And hi-hats, I go back and forth between a bunch of them. This one I've been using lately, a custom special dry, 15-inch. But I switch back and forth. Like I also love old hi-hat, so I have this one that is there's an old K. It's
Okay.
the bottom,
It looks
but
like
I've
a
been using,
K-Rob though.
yeah, that's a carob. That's like super old. And this one, special custom special dry effects on top,
Yes.
and it it's just a very different kind of sound. So I like switching back and forth, and the cool thing is that on the left side of my kit now, because I use 3 snares, one
Yes.
a deep one, then a smaller one. This can be a piccolo or a soprano, and then
Right.
the regular snare over here. I can be playing on the left side of the kit only, and between the 3 snares and the stack and the hi-hat, it gives me like so many possibilities just on this side of the kit, which I love. And then this one is a really cool stack that I started experimenting recently, which is a special custom special dry trash crash. This is 17 on top of left side right.
Wow. Okay.
It's a K. I think it's a K special left side right. Yeah. So custom left side right, and that's a
Nice.
22-inch. So the cool thing about this kind of stack is that I play a lot of jazz, of course.
Yeah.
So one cool thing that this gives me is that if I write here, I still get like a. But then if I wanted to play something with more I don't know, some backbeat or something.
Yeah, almost like a stack.
So you have this area of the cymbal which allows you, to play a bunch of different things that are more jazz oriented, and then this one, when I hit it, then it gives me a completely different kind of a weapon to use
Yes.
in a different context, right? And this has
Beautiful.
been my configuration for a while. This is a Phoenix Yamaha kit. So I've been
Nice.
using 12, 14, and 16 for a while now.
Right.
My three snares. I have my pedal with a tambourine. I used to wear a cowbell a bunch,
Yes.
um, and my double pedal.
What's the bass drum size? It looks
This is an
like a
18.
18. Okay, 18 by.
This 18 by 16, I
Okay.
think. But that keeps changing. So I have
Right.
my 20 over here, and
Yes.
I have a like a really old bass drum that I had from before. And here in my studio, I have everything set up so that I can just open Pro Tools and start recording. I have everything ready. Everything's mic'd
Beautiful.
constantly. Uh, like the snares, everything's mic'd on the top and the
Right.
bottom. These ones too.
What are the
Uh,
main mics that you're using for kick drum and snare drum?
so kick drum, this is and man, I'm telling
That's
you,
a
I'm so bad.
52.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. This is RA20.
Okay.
This is an RA20,
Okay.
and yeah, this is the beta one, and then
Yeah.
I use Shure mics on the toms, these little ones.
Yes.
These are the sensory percussion triggers that I've been using too.
Lovely.
And then there's Neumanns as overheads. I have three,
Okay.
and one more on the hi-hat. And what else? I think that's it.
Do you
And then
anytime prefer miking like the ride or the hi-hats below, or it's always from the top for you?
it's always from the top.
Okay.
I've never really liked the sound it creates from the bottom
The bottom
so
mic,
much.
yeah.
Yeah, and with the three overheads, then you have pretty good control on the stereo imaging and how you want to project the kit. And
Right.
then if we keep going here, I have like a little assortment of guitars
Nice.
and that I've been using a lot for a film score that I'll tell you about later because it's an Indian film score.
Oh,
So
lovely. Okay.
yeah, and this is a guitar that Pat Metheny gave me a few years ago,
Nice.
and I've been using it a lot too. This is a mini, sorry, a sub fatty, a Moog.
Move, yeah.
But I love Moogs. And this is another Moog. It's called a Matriarch, which is also I'm discovering new things to do with it all the time.
Are
This is
you
my little
also
setup.
using any room mics, Antonio, for the
No,
kit?
no, I think the room is too small
Okay.
for room mics. And I have, that's a stack that I have that, I go to depending on what I want to do. These are the ones that I use the most. So this is, this would be my main setup. And then if
Right.
I want different sounds, like for example, I have this flat right here, and they custom
Nice.
20 that, I use a lot for different effects and stuff. Then this one's like big chinas or swishes.
Yes.
Depending on what I'm playing or what I'm recording, I also will switch, especially this one. I'll switch the Constantinople and put one of those big swishes just so
Right.
that I can do a roll, from the drums from the beginning to the end and then end on one of those big chinas with a bunch of rivets, and it just sounds amazing. Um, what else? Some more effects. This is an old A really old day that kind of sounds very Bonham-y, John Bonham.
Yes.
When I crash on it, super cool. These are some custom cymbals that I've acquired from different places. So there's a K custom. Those are like one of the first cymbals that I used to use because I was more
Wow.
into rock and fusion.
Right.
So it's cool to have this really pingy cymbal because now that I play jazz, I rarely get to use those things.
True.
In a custom, some just assorted ride cymbals that I like to kind of change up every now and then.
Are
And
these
that's
all
my main.
handpicked by you from the factory?
Yeah, yeah. I've gone a lot through the
Nice.
years. And this is my basic setup here with I use Universal Audio Apollos, which are great preamps. And then I have this keyboard, which is a Complete Control 88 from Native Instruments. So that's how I
Beautiful.
control all the plugins from the computer. So it's not a huge setup, but it's more than enough for what I need.
Absolutely. Amazing, amazing. Thank you for the studio tour.
Yeah, man, my pleasure.
So, going back in the day, like, if you can talk about your influences, and were you always into jazz fusion music, or it happened much later?
It happened later. In the beginning, I was very into rock and roll, so I used to listen to everything my mom used to listen to. So the Beatles, Rolling Stones, Ringo Starr would be my first influence probably. Then Charlie Watts, then Led Zeppelin. She used to listen to Janis Joplin. Then I discovered Rush and the Police, with Neil Peart and Stuart Copeland, and like most drummers, I got completely obsessed with those two for years. And then one day I discovered the Chicory Electric Band with Dave Weckl.
Yes.
And that blew me away because I was into rock and roll, and first, like I said, it was Ringo and Charlie Watts, which more basic, keeping the beat kind of drumming. And then when I started listening to John Bonham, then I was like, okay, this is a different kind of drumming, who is not only keeping the beat but really, really, taking a very active part in the communication between the band members. And then even more when I discovered Neil Peart and Stuart Copeland. They had very distinct drum sounds, and you cannot have the Police without Stuart Copeland or Rush without Neil Peart. It's just
True.
impossible. So I really liked bands that had very clear identities with the drummers. That you could recognize the sound very quickly. And then when I discovered the Chicory Electric Band, Dave Weckl also had a very distinct drum sound, of course, and because of Weckl, then I started going through Vinnie Colaiuta and Steve Gadd and Dennis Chambers and Billy Cobham, that kind of very virtuoso drumming that
Yeah.
I was really, really taken aback by the amount of skill that all these drummers had. So
Right.
that's when I started really practicing hard in order to get more technique and more chops and stuff like that. But it was a very slow process of me getting to there. I played in rock bands for a long time before I even discovered all that stuff when I was living back in Mexico.
Right. So I've also heard that before you went to Berkeley, you were also kind of part of a uni in New Mexico, right? But you were learning piano and not drums.
Yeah, no, but this is not New Mexico. This is Mexico City.
Okay, Mexico City. Yeah.
Yeah. I was born and raised in Mexico City,
Yeah.
and when I was 15, I started taking piano lessons because I saw the movie Amadeus,
Okay.
and I got obsessed by Mozart. So I wanted to be like Mozart, and I wanted to write symphonies and stuff and play the piano, but I was always playing the drums at the same time. So I got myself into piano lessons, and then I got accepted into the conservatory, but to study classical piano and classical composition. So a lot of people in school didn't know that I played drums, which was funny, you know. So they saw me playing piano, and then there used to be a yearly jazz festival in the school. And one time I asked if I could play with my band, so everybody assumed that I was going to play with piano. And then I
Right.
showed up and played drums, and everybody was like, you know, you play drums better than you play piano. Maybe you should do that. And
Right.
you know, piano for me was like a really cool and a very necessary thing to learn and to understand and to study classical music and learn about structure and forms and how you know a symphony is built. All those things that at the moment I didn't understand that were going to help me so much later on in life when I became a composer and an arranger and a producer and stuff like that. But yeah, it was you know, very good 4.5 years that I was in the conservatory studying piano as a major.
Wow. So once you came to Berkeley, I also wanted to know, and there are a lot of musicians from India who are kind of getting into the scene. Like, it's how important is for any musician or a drummer to get into a university, something like Berkeley or MI, or if you can share your experience about that.
Well, how important it is to get into a place like that?
Yes.
Well, you know, of course, if you can go to a good school and study with good teachers, you know, you should, you know, if it's in within your possibilities. But a lot of times, you know, it's very hard to leave your country and then go somewhere else and start a new life like that. It is very, very complicated. So if you can, I would say yes, do it. But you can also, you know, improve a lot. You can also learn a lot. You can explore a lot without having to go anywhere. Now, thankfully, we have the internet, which is an incredible tool for drummers to check out other drummers to learn. There's almost too much information, you know, but it's not a requirement to go somewhere else if you want to improve. You can improve from wherever you are, but you need some guidance, and you know, a good teacher will always be helpful, of course.
Right. I feel obviously, as you said, information is pretty easy in today's time, but I think the kind of musicians that you must have met during that course of period that you were there, I think that also does also impact your music, and you kind of also make a lot of contacts, right, during that period.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You know, one of the greatest things about Berkeley is that, you know, you graduate with, I don't know, 5,000 students or something like that. And then a lot of those students, you know, move to back to their countries or move to New York or move to LA. So when I got to New York after I graduated, I realized that I knew so many people already that were established here and in LA, and I would go to Europe and perform over there, and I would run into, you know, tons of people that I went to school with. So the tentacles and the reach of Berkeley, you know, is pretty amazing because it's as a music college, is probably the biggest one. You
Right.
know, when I was there were like 250 drummers. Now there's more
Wow.
in my generation. So it's a very tough and competitive environment, but it's, you know, it's never going to be as tough as when you get out and into the real world. You know, that's when I came to New York, that's when really I realized how you know, crazy the competition is here, and it makes you grow, you know, as a player and as a person, definitely.
So after Berkeley, you were, I think, learning with Danilo Perez, right? If I'm not wrong. And
Yes.
then you actually kind of you were learning, but you kind of started. You became a part of his band, and you were touring with him the next year, I guess. So how did that happen?
Right. So, you know, after I graduated from Berkeley, which was in 1997, well, actually, right before that, I had become friends with Danilo, who, for
Okay.
those who don't know, is an incredible piano player from Panama that played with many people. Lately, with the great Wayne Shorter, he was in his band for a
Wow.
long time, and with Dizzy Gillespie. uh, in the United Nations Orchestra, and then with Paquito de Rivera for a long time. So, I became friends with him because he was living, he still lives in Boston, and he was teaching at New England Conservatory, which is right around the block from
Yeah.
Berkeley. So I had become friends with him just because of our our love for music and our Latino connection,
Right.
obviously. And when I right before I graduated, we went on this little tour of Panama, which was like a
Okay.
student tour with Danilo, and we got along great, and it was a great experience performing together. And I remember on the way back from the airport, we came back from Panama into Boston, and then we were driving together in a cab because he was gonna drop me off before going home, and he told me, well, somebody called me for a recommendation for a drummer, and I gave them your name. I'm not sure if they're gonna call you, but hopefully they will call. I don't want to tell you who it is because I don't want to get you too overly excited.
Right.
So like, okay, and I was just about to graduate from Berkeley, and then a couple of days later, I got a phone call from Paquito de Rivera's management offering me this long tour in Europe with the United Nations Orchestra, which was the one that Dizzy Gillespie was leading right before his death. So
Wow.
then Paquito kind of took over, and they needed a drummer, and they called me, and I went on tour and did this amazing, long month long tour in Europe, all the major festivals, and it was that was exactly what I wanted to do. It was like finally, my dream is coming through, touring with a famous jazz musician, playing really cool music. And then I came back, and my visa expired because I was Mexican. Now
Yeah.
I'm also an American citizen, but back then I was just renewing my visas all the time. So I came back, and my visa expired, and I forgot that I had to apply for what they call the practical training, which allows you one more year after you graduate to work in the United
Okay.
States. So I forgot. I missed the deadline, and I came back, and I was like, "Oh my God, what am I going to do now?" And then, luckily, New England Conservatory offered me an amazing scholarship to go and do like a master's there.
Wow.
So I went back to school, and the program I was doing allows you to have two private teachers. But one thing that I recommend to drummers at some point is to study with people that are not drummers, because obviously we tend to study with drummers, right? So we always have the point of view from another drummer.
Right.
So what I wanted to do is to study with somebody that would play another instrument, and they would give me their point of view on what they needed
Right.
from me as a drummer, but what do they need as a piano player or as a saxophone player. So I studied with George Garzone, who is an incredible saxophone player, and Danilo Perez. So it was kind of an evil plan that I had to learn all the music from Danilo and then come prepared to the lesson, and then ask Danilo, "Hey, Danilo, so how does this tune of yours go? Like Panamonk or something like that."
Hmm.
Oh yeah, and then I would start playing it, and then I knew it, of course, and it was like, "Oh, you know it?" I'm like, "Yeah, kind of, kind of." Oh yeah, so let's play it. So then our lessons would be a lot of just about playing a lot of
Right.
his music, and then I would bring a bass player, and we would play his music. So, without him knowing it, he was kind of training me to be his drummer.
Wow.
And then one day it happened that his drummer back then, who was Jeff Ballard, he couldn't make a couple of gigs in Paris. And, I already knew all the stuff. So then I did it. And then one thing led to another. And then I ended up playing with him for a few years. But that's another good piece of advice that I can give to people. If you can hone in mentally on who you would like to play with, and learn all the music, because you never know when you're going to get a chance to
Yeah.
be in the right place at the right time. And if it's somebody you really really want to play with, then you will be prepared, and you never know where those kinds of opportunities are going to lead you.
Wow. That's great advice. Uh, Okay, coming to Pat Metheny, firstly, I'm a very, very big fan of the music that you do with him, and especially the DVD that came out, I think, live in Korea. I think it completely changed me as a musician on how I really wanted to, if I ever wanted to do a band like that, it needs to be presented in this particular manner. Even if it's jazz music or fusion music, it completely, it's like basically a university that you can, if you watch that DVD, it really trains you to be a better musician. Tell us about your experience first with, obviously, working with him for so many years, and what things go behind when you prepare an act like that,
Well, that particular video you're talking about is from an album called The Way Up.
yeah,
And for those who don't know, The Way Up is an album, was the last album we did as the Pat Metheny group, and that was
okay,
already 2005. Well,
yes,
we recorded the album 2003, I think. But it came out 2005. We did a long tour, and the video we recorded was in Seoul, in Korea. And
yes,
that particular piece is a through composed piece. So once we start, we never stop until
stop, yeah,
the end. So it was a really, really cool thing to do, because it was like being part of a play or a movie, where you get to develop something over an hour and a half almost without stopping. Because, in pretty much any context, you get to play tunes, right? If you're in front of people, you play a composition, then stop, then, regroup for a second, then
yeah,
play another one. And the whole night goes like that. So you have little breaks. But to get yourself in the mind frame of okay, this is a marathon. We're gonna run a marathon now, and it's gonna last an hour and a half. It would put my concentration, and I think everybody's concentration, at a completely different level. And it was a very, very complex piece of music. And when we would play it live, it would be to a click, most of it.
wow,
So yeah, so because it had sequences on top,
yes,
and back then it was seven of us on stage, and everybody had choreography, with different instruments. I remember I even played bass,
yes,
yeah, towards the end of the piece
yes,
because everybody was playing so many things. There were
yeah,
23 guitars being played through the night by
wow,
different people, and Pat played like 10, I don't know. And I remember when we got to that part in the rehearsal, they were saying, "Well, who's gonna play that?" And they looked at me and like, "You're not doing anything." And I'm like, "Okay, give me the bass. I'll try." And I play a fair amount, so it was not a hard part or anything. So
okay,
it was just fun, to have that kind of choreography going on. But the very funny thing that happened to me was that, just like everybody else on stage, everybody was so concentrated on what they were doing because it was such a hard piece of music that I never pay attention to what anybody else was doing. I was just really, really into
focusing,
what I was doing. And, I would glance sometimes, but I was just into the music. And then when I saw the DVD, I was like, wow, this band is amazing, because I never really understood, the level of complexity of what everybody else was doing as well. So, it was a really cool thing to be a part of. And we must have rehearsed maybe for 4 or 5 days. But when we rehearsed, we already, everybody knew the music by heart. We all knew the music very, very well. So it was more like okay, everybody knows the dance steps, and then we all get together and we
yes,
work on the choreography together. But it was an incredible experience. Unfortunately, it was too many gigs in a very short amount of time. So the tour lasted maybe like 5, 6 months, but we would be doing 7, 8 gigs a week sometimes.
wow,
And the gig was an hour and a half or more, an hour 45 of this piece. And then blah, 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 we would finish, bravo, bravo. And then Pat would introduce the band real quick, blah, blah, blah. and now we're gonna play, some of our old hits, and then we would play for another hour and a half, almost straight.
Wow.
So it was between 3:15, 3 hours and a half each gig. And
Oh,
back then, I was definitely younger, and I did not really know how to pace myself. I would get so excited by the music that I would give it 150% every night, which you should, but I would do it in a very raw, animalistic way,
right.
almost. So I would just plan my evening. So by the end of the concert, I was dropping dead every night. I had no energy left. And I started having physical problems. I never got tendonitis or anything like that, but I would get all this back pain, and my legs would be hurting and my ankles would be hurting because I was just hitting too hard.
Right.
So after that tour, I took a little break and started trying to figure out how to be more effective on the drums without having to hit so hard, and save myself from injury, because those tours would be just too intense,
Right.
and they would last a fair amount of time. So I had to learn how to pace myself, basically.
Right. Talking about, doing back-to-back concerts and, playing for 3 hours, there was a question by a dear friend called Joe Jacob from Bangalore saying, how do you maintain that posture? Even whenever I've seen you play, you are always your back is straight, shoulders down, relaxed. And, how do you maintain that posture for like 3 hours on a gig like
Well,
that?
you have to be very conscious of that, because I remember when I started playing jazz early on, I would change my position a lot. I would raise my shoulder because
Right.
ding, 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 it just felt good, to have a little bit of attitude whenever I was playing. And then I started realizing that, oh, by the end of the night, this is hurting, you know.
Right.
So I started trying to make adjustments, especially when I had to play for 3.5 hours. If I didn't do those kinds of adjustments, then I would suffer a lot by the end of the night. So every time you sit down and play, you have to be very aware of things that you're doing right and things that you're doing wrong. And if you feel like there's things that you could improve on, then you need to make that adjustment. And that's really for self preservation, so that you can play longer, have a longer career without pain,
Yes.
which for a drummer, it's when you hit 50 or 60 and you've been playing hard and absorbing shock for years, of course, you could have problems. So then you have to find ways of how to be the most relaxed and the most effective while you're playing,
Right.
because you can overdo things very easily because emotion takes over,
Right.
right? And you're like, you get into the music, which is that's why we play music. But when you're doing it day in and day out, then you have to be careful about certain things. If you only do one gig a week, then you can give it your all, and then you have the whole week to recover.
Right.
But if you're
Right.
if you're doing a tour, you don't have time to recover, and then you're playing in front of a bunch of people every night that played money to see you. So
Right.
you have to be a very responsible, almost like if you were a high performance athlete.
Right.
I would get massages every time I could on the road, and just try to be good to your body. Sleep as much as you can, eat well, because on the road it's very easy to not sleep and eat and start eating a lot of crap,
Yeah.
and that starts taking a toll. And drinking,
Yes.
or doing anything else that will hinder your performance. Like I never really drink before a gig. After a gig, yes, I'll have a drink. But
Right.
before a gig, I feel like because we are the timekeepers, we really need to be, 100% there.
Also, I always wanted to ask you, whenever I've seen you perform, the dynamics is so amazing. Like especially the last Vancouver show that I saw, where you did like about a 10-minute drum solo. How do you still maintain that posture in the sense of I have a habit, like whenever you kind of play maybe a little soft or something like that, your back kind of tends to bend a bit, and how do you maintain that dynamic approach during the drum solo, and what is the uh, composition approach? Because I always feel that you're kind of saying some kind of a story when you are doing a drum solo. So is it planned, or it comes on stage while you're doing it?
So I'm glad we touched on this. I mean, I'll start with the posture thing. So I did gymnastics for a long time. I was part of the junior national team in Mexico for a couple of years, and I love doing like floor exercise and doing the flips and all that stuff. But I hurt myself quite a bit. My lower back was injured, in a way that it has become kind of part of my life. I have to
Okay.
deal with this back injury that I'm okay, but if I sit down for a long time, if I stand up for a long time, if I do anything for a long time, my back starts hurting. So I need to keep stretching constantly. So if I don't keep a really good posture where my back is very straight, if I
Okay.
go a little bit this way, then it starts hurting. And
Okay.
if I go a little bit the other way, it starts hurting. So I need to be like right in the
Okay.
center of my balance, like where it comes the most natural, and then my back is okay. So that might be part of why, if you ever see me play, I'm usually, in that position to avoid further injury to my back. Yeah. And then when it comes to dynamics and all that stuff, from playing jazz a lot, playing in small places with no amplification, where I'm playing with a piano trio or something like that. Sometimes I would do tours in Europe with Danilo Perez, for example, and play like a church in Italy, with a piano, bass, and drums, and the drums were from 1950, with heads from 1950 in this tiny little town in Italy, back in the day, like in 97, 98. And, that, of course, it was very difficult, because I couldn't hear the piano. The drums would resonate a lot in a very boomy place like a church or a big hall. And I had to learn how to control my sound, and especially playing piano trio in those kinds of places. I had to do it. It's kind of just to survive the situation, to survive the gig. So there's an interesting story with that happened to me with Charlie Haden. And Charlie Haden is a legendary bass player. He used to play with Keith Jarrett and with Pat Metheny too.
Right.
And he was famous for hating drummers that played too loud. So he would bring plexiglass, and if you play too loud, then he would put plexiglass around you, because he had tinnitus. He had like an ear thing that
Right.
would bother him, and so he didn't want to risk it, and he would just plexiglass you, and and we played at the Village Vanguard, which is the most famous jazz club in New York, and it's a very small place, and you can hear a pin drop. So I was, very conscious that, okay, I'm going to have to play extra soft this week because Charlie Haden, wants me to play soft. So the repertoire were mainly ballads and boleros and stuff like that. So it was a lot of brushes, so that
Right.
was fine. But I didn't want to play the whole night with brushes. So then by the second tune, I started playing with my sticks, but I was being so careful not to overdo it, and I was actually so tense because I could never go like this. It was all like,
Yes, okay.
half motions,
Right.
and I was like, ugh, it's just really hard. And then we finished the first set, and we were backstage, and then Charlie said, "Antonio, man, can I talk to you for a second about the volume?" And I'm like, he's gonna plexiglass me, and then he said, "You know, it's great, but can you play a little louder because I can't hear you?" I'm like,
Wow.
"Yes, great."
That's good.
So to me that was like, okay, so I got into a point that I can really really control my volume,
Yeah.
and but it was something that I definitely worked on. And then when it comes to what you were talking about, like at the end of Birdman, where I would do like an extended drum solo, and it would go from 10 minutes to 20 minutes sometimes.
Yes.
I like to start with absolutely nothing, concrete in my head. I just know I'm gonna try to develop a story, like you were saying, right? So for years now, storytelling has become one of the main things that I want to do on my instrument and in music in general. When I write music, when I improvise music, it's all about storytelling. And storytelling, if you think of it in musical terms as your speech, right? When you hear somebody reciting a very good speech, like I don't know, John F. Kennedy or Martin Luther King, one of their famous speeches. It's like it grabs you, it takes you in, and it's very clear, and it makes you feel something. So how can you do that as a musician, as a drummer, especially, because obviously a piano player has harmony, has melody, and has rhythm, right? And we tend to think of drums as we only have rhythm.
Hmm.
So a lot of times I'll start a clinic, a drum clinic, by asking people, okay, so how many drummers do we have here? And then 95%, hey, cool, okay. And now how many real musicians do we have here? And then they don't know what to do. They're like,
Right.
should I raise my hand or not? And I say, well, that's precisely why I'm here, because I want you guys to think of yourselves as musicians that just happen to play drums, but you're
Wow.
musicians first and drummers second. So that having that frame of mind that, okay, I have this instrument that I need to make music with, then you start seeing drums under a different light, not just like, okay, how fast can I play? Because after seeing hundreds and hundreds of drum clinics throughout my life, uh, I started realizing that so many of them are just geared for people to learn about technique, learn how to play fast, learn how to play flashy, look at how big my drum set is and how many things I can do, and
Right.
my single strokes are faster than anybody else. So okay, that's cool. You need technique, that's for sure. But I see technique as just the tool for you to make music.
Right.
So the cool thing about storytelling in music is that you don't need to have, the technique of Vinny Colaiuta or Dennis Chambers or me, or, you can deal with whatever level of technique you have. And it is just a mindset. How can I use this technique in order to tell a story? And, I always tell people, okay, there's a few things in music that in order for you to make music always need to be there. One of them is a motif. A motif is an idea, right?
Yes.
Any idea, rhythmic or melodic, that's a motif. And then you need repetition. You need to repeat the idea in order for you to establish it.
Right.
And you need space. Space is one of the things that make the music feel like music. And then you need question and answer. In other ways, you say, okay, how are you doing? And then you say, well, I'm fine, right? You don't say, how are you doing? How are you doing? I'm fine. I'm fine. You don't repeat
Repeat.
things that way. So one very easy example that everybody knows is like, okay, what would you say if I said, dun 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 dun?
Da-da, da-da-da-da-da-da.
Exactly. So there's question and answer, but it's the same motif, it's the same idea,
Right.
right? So this is Mozart, of course. He exposes it and then answers it, and he has a whole symphony just based on that.
Right.
So when you are improvising on the drums, that's exactly what you should be doing. Exposing something, leaving space, thinking about what you just did, repeating it, adding stuff to it, and then all of a sudden, what you're playing starts getting some sense of organization, you know, because otherwise, what I see a lot of drummers do is like they're playing something and then they switch to something that is absolutely unrelated to the first thing they were playing. And then that way is like if I'm talking about you know, how to build a solo, but I love scrambled eggs in the morning. They're great, you know. One thing absolutely has nothing to do with the other. But the beautiful thing about this kind of thinking is that you can get from developing a solo to scrambled eggs. You can do it with transitioning, right? So with a good transition, you can get away from going from A to Z, you know, really, you know, something that might not be related apparently, but you can make the transition. So this morning, I knew I was going to come here and talk to you about, you know, drums, but, you know, I wanted to make sure that I was cool and I wanted to eat something before we start our conversation. So I made myself some scrambled eggs and, you know, now I feel much better and now I can talk to you about, you know, anything. So it's just a simple example of how to transition from A to B without sounding completely abrupt. So one of the main things that I try to do now is this storytelling, whether I'm writing, whether I'm improvising, whether I'm playing with a band, where I'm playing by myself, is all about trying to tell a story, developing your characters in the story. And that's the only way people are really going to follow what you're doing. Otherwise, that's what happens when you're playing something and then people start looking at their phone because they already got bored. And there's more interesting things to do somewhere else rather than listening to what you're doing in real time, you know?
Right. Wow, this is amazing. I think a lot of drummers are going to get some really great insight of how to do a drum solo now, for sure. Antonio, if you don't mind, it's about 57 minutes right now. Can I restart the session because it's going to stop in 3 minutes, and I have a small Q&A section where drummers had sent some questions for you. I can restart the session and you can just join in back.
Let's do it.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay.